if we can just start off talking about, narcissistic romantic relationships, and maybe emotional responses with regards to that would be nice.
Let me say just one thing. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here, and I've listened to some of your prior interviews.
Mhm,
So I know that you're familiar with narcissistic relationships.
mhm,
And I guess if we just start in a very general way,
mhm,
what's something that you may typically hear, for instance, in terms of like a narcissistic relationship? I'm asking because there are so many different directions we could go because there are very different types of
mhm,
narcissistic relationships, but
mhm.
we should probably start with the one that's most common. So what might be something that you hear as you're interviewing people or you're on social media and you're listening to people's stories?
Mhm. So, this has come up with interviews, but I also have to say this is something that's come up with people in real life that I know that are narcissistic. Like they've been
Mhm.
diagnosed with NPD and they have shared this with me as well directly. Not quite sure why, but they do feel at a certain point in their relationship where they dismiss their partners and sometimes it's
Mhm.
pretty conscious as well.
Okay, wait, let's just start with that, okay?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Because that what you just touched on is probably one of the central features of narcissism,
Mm-hmm.
in my perspective at least,
Mm-hmm.
which is if you think about different attachment styles,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they're referred to as like the dismissive attachment style.
Mm-hmm.
And what that really looks like is what? Like, what kind of stories do you hear? That they get in these romantic relationships and they have this feeling like, what?
Mm-hmm.
eh, I don't really care. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't really care about my partner, or, sometimes they could even be quite cruel or critical or devaluing of their partner, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or if their partner is doing something, let's say just hypothetically, like they're going out with friends or they're taking a trip with their girlfriends or they're going
Mm-hmm.
to a bar, they can have this feeling of like, it doesn't matter, right? Whatever. I'm like, it doesn't bother me. Do
Mm-hmm.
whatever you want. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if that's similar to what you've heard, but that's sort of when you said dismissive, that nicely captures sort
Mm-hmm.
of the essence of what I think is at the core of narcissism is what we call the grandiose sense of self. That's really one of the defining characteristics of the narcissistic personality. And that's part of the grandiose sense of self, this dismissive attitude, as if they don't care.
What do you mean as if? Do you mean they do care?
Well, this is the paradox, okay?
Uh-huh.
They will present as if they don't care. But if you listen, even to some of your interviews, right? And I've listened
Uh-huh.
to plenty and I sit with these patients. When
Mm-hmm.
you listen very closely, something happens that's very curious. Like in one breath, they'll say, whatever, I don't care. I'm not the jealous type, right? They could do whatever they want. That's the dismissive part. But
Mm-hmm.
then we have to look at two things, okay?
Mm-hmm.
One is it's called like the contiguity of associations. What follows the question? What follows when they're talking about this kind of relationship? And oftentimes what you'll hear is, but then when she wants to break up with me, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, I feel like I'm invested in the relationship. And then they do care. They don't want to lose the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm suggesting is that there's then a bit of a paradox, right? They could say they don't care, but paradoxically, they do care. So, but let's go to number two, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the devil is in the details, and this part is really important. So let's go back to the hypothetical example when the girlfriend goes out to the bar or
Mm-hmm.
travels with friends,
Mm-hmm.
and they say, I don't care. And then you say to them, okay, I understand that, but can you tell me, what was your night like? What did you do that night? And they'll say, what? Like, what? Just like you just did. Like, what?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And typically what you find
Mm-hmm.
is either they went out too and got intoxicated or high.
Mm-hmm.
They go in sometimes into like like a depressive state,
Okay.
right? Where they'll just sit home. They can't even like put a meal together for themselves,
Oh.
right? Or they'll skip a meal, or they'll turn compulsively to something,
Mm-hmm.
pornography, whatever one can imagine doing compulsively.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these things are signs that this separation had an incredibly important impact on them, but not one that they consciously register, right? Because they're in that illusion of, that's the grandiose sense of self again, right? The core of the narcissistic structure is the grandiosity, the illusion of independence. I don't need anybody. So if you're going out with your girlfriends, I don't care. That's, if we put a technical term on it, I'm borrowing a little bit from psychoanalytic theory. It's called an affective block. It's a block in feeling any emotions towards somebody else, any dependency needs. All of that has to be disavowed and denied.